Hello, everyone. Hey, it's Kathryn and 5D Visionary Elevated Consciousness Coach. We are in episode 16 of All Things Ascension. I'm going to give a minute here to maybe get some people to jump on. Today's talk, full disclosure, it's potentially triggering for some of you, maybe for many of you, but it is so important that we talk about this now. It's important that we talk about this now. There I am, I'm live. Hey, Mary. And now I can see comments. Yes, this could be a potentially triggering talk for some of you, but as I invite everyone when listening to what I share and what I talk about, take what resonates and leave the rest. We're all adults here. We decide and we can align with what speaks to our place of truth or what doesn't. And so that is to your discretion and discernment. But I'm going to bring some information forward that I feel very strong about sharing. And I'm going to give you a little backstory about how this came around too. So hello to everyone who's joining. Say hi, let me know you're here. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Kathryn. Let's see who else is here. I know there's more people, but I can't see your names. But hello, everyone. Hello, hello. So I'm teaching a program. I want to tell you a little bit how this talk came about and what followed. I am teaching a program right now called Quintessence Society. And this is a group program where we are journeying through and exploring dimensional realms of awareness, 4D through 7D. And we just introduced the 5D module. And this is an experiential course as well as offering discussion. And in the QQS sessions, we journey into the dimensional space to locate the dimensions in our bodies, because dimensions are places that we locate in the body, if you didn't know that. So when we were going through 5D, we accessed the ascension spiral. And the ascension spiral it's a torsion wave, and I'm going to talk about torsion waves here in a second because they're very important. It is a torsion wave of energy that comes from Alcyone, the great central sun, in the Pleiades, in this star cluster, and informs us through our solar resonance of light codes. It's how we incorporate and disseminate the information from ascended consciousness is through these light codes, and we wouldn't be able to do that if we weren't solar in nature. And so when we go into this ascension spiral that exists between this gateway of ascension that is generated from Alcyone and the Pleiades and comes into planet Earth, we can download all kinds of information that up-levels, upgrades, elevates our consciousness and tells us more about the nature of who we really are. And so it's an incredible experience to journey into this space and then locate that information in your body. So that's what those QQS sessions are about. And I had asked my group members after their experience, what kind of information came in? And one of the ladies in my group program had mentioned that she heard very clearly the term light leader and shared that. And when I tuned into that information that she had shared, I started getting not only information about her particular soul essence and the message that is aligned with her and getting that light leader nudge and bit of information, but also a whole cascade of information in terms of a massive, massive blockchain download, I call it, came in around this all at the same time. And then since then, this was just a few days ago, because our classes are on Thursday, so this was just a few days ago, I've been seeing all kinds of synchronicity around the same message and things that have come through to keep elevating this message and bring new nuances to this message. And when things just kind of hit you over the head like that, or when they hit me over the head like that, I feel very prompted to share because it's completely in integrity with what I do and what I share and what I talk about. And what came in as part of this download of information is that information about soul groups and how we evolve together. And there are two particular soul groups on this planet because this dualized nature of 3D space-time that we're in, that makes up the plane of existence of planet Earth, it's highly dualized. And so there are two camps of soul groups here that are present. I have dog hair on my lip, sorry. There are subgroups to those two main soul groups, but there are two main dualized groups, and they are here to do two quite different things. And the soul groups are either repeater or leader. And what came up when I was receiving this massive blockchain download was information about how these soul groups came to be here, why 3D Earth is hosting these soul groups that are off planet and have been off planet, or either from other star systems or planets or even galaxies, why they've just been, through higher intelligence of the cosmos, brought here, and 3D Earth was meant to host these other soul groups. Hi, Heidi. And that, bearing that in mind, there are also millions of people who have graduated from the repeater soul group faction. Many times over have repeated, or many times have graduated from very higher levels of repeater mode to come back here and assist these soul groups in ascending. So this is a really incredible thing to kind of sink your teeth into, but it can be triggering for some of you because of what I'm going to talk about. So here we go. You may want to grab some water. So even a little more backstory on that. We are in such an incredibly pivotal time here on planet Earth for a number of reasons. But we are in a new astrological age. I would argue that we have already entered into the age of Pisces. I'm sorry, we exited the age of Pisces and we are in the age of Aquarius. I would argue that that has already happened. In my work with timelines, of course it has, because everything is now. There is a timeline or an expression where we have entered into the age of Aquarius, but it's also starting to have a vibration in density of our now dominant timeline. I know that sounds weird, but we have, basically, all you need to take away is that my personal belief is that we have entered into the age of Aquarius. And the reason I know this, or I'm fully convinced that this is true, is that every time we move into a new astrological age, it is a battleground for consciousness. What does that mean? It means that the powers that be that held the earth structures, power, structures of belief systems, all of that out of integrity, those powers that be, they always have a lot to lose when we enter into a new astrological age. And I'm going to talk about why this new astrological age always ushers in a massive change, okay? I'm going to get down to the nitty-gritty of why that happens, okay? I'm not just going to talk about it in broad strokes here. When we think of the upgrading frequencies of this planet, okay, it is not just planet Earth that is increasing in frequency. It's our entire solar system. It's the entire galaxy, okay? So when that happens, when it's not just the planet Earth that is increasing in frequency, it's the entire galaxy. When that happens, there is a density shift. So you're moving out of 3D density into the next higher hub of consciousness, which is not always 4D right away. It's usually a higher hub of consciousness within 3D before it can graduate into 4D. And then 4D is another dualized realm with different hubs of consciousness. And then we can, if we graduate through those hubs of consciousness, can move into 5D, which is unity consciousness, okay, which is heart, brain, awareness, and balance. With this density shift that always happens as the result of a new astrological age, what happens is there are cosmic intelligence, sound waves of cosmic intelligence, okay, vibration waves of cosmic intelligence that are sent through torsion waves. And torsion waves, if you were to think of a tube torus with a central point, and then waves of energy oscillating out, going all the way out and coming back into the central point, which is stationary. Torsion waves work like that. They are spiral waves also, which has a lot to do with the ascension spiral between the Pleiades and the Earth, sending out massive, massive codes of elevated frequency right now. These spiral waves, they transform DNA structures of all living organisms on any planets that are within that ripple effect of the torsion waves. You guys with me so far? Stay with me. So when the DNA goes through these shifts as a result of these torsion waves, it's literally upgrading us on a subatomic level, really, let alone cellular. So all living organisms on all the planets get an upshot in frequency. This is going to transform the DNA. It has to. It gets altered, it gets upgraded. And so there's a lot of different and very dramatic changes that happen, especially for humans, okay? It affects our physical, our mental, our emotional bodies as we are shifting. It shifts our brain chemistry, and neurological networks get an upshot. They get an upgrade, so we aren't constantly triggering the body-mind correlation syndrome of fight or flight, of that survival level consciousness. And this is allowing us to receive ever increasing light codes without going into that, cascade of the central nervous system kind of shutting down and burning itself out, okay? And when we go through this DNA shift, all of the things that we've had confusion about, or we didn't have a clear message about, things we couldn't put our finger on, soul contracts that we've taken on that we couldn't be sure about, or had a lot of confusion or chaos around those things, it becomes very clear. Because our DNA coding, every time we go through this astrological shift of a new age, it becomes clearer and clearer. The brain chemistry changes, the bodies of the emotional, the mental, the physical bodies, it all changes, it all shifts because the DNA is shifting and upgrading. And when we go through this portal, this transmission period of entering into a new astrological age, that is when we are most vulnerable. Because here we are going through this shift, and we don't know about it, because here in 3D we go through this veil of forgetting. We have this collective amnesia about who we really are and our divinity, so we don't know about this process. We're cut off from that level of awareness, at least in the conscious mind state we are. And so we're searching outside of ourselves for answers, aren't we? How do I get help from this? Who's going to rescue me from that? Right? And if you're in that place, you are out of power, out of integrity with your intuitive self, your dynamic, super conscious mind, and everything that is connected to that level of awareness of being plugged into the one all. And so naturally, you look to where are the power structures on this planet in this density that can help me? Who can rescue me, right? That is always and ever going to put you out of power with your divinity. That is always and ever going to put you out of power with your sovereignty. It's going to put you out of alignment with your truth, the truth of who you really are and what level you really resonate and vibrate at, and everything that's, part of that capability of being in line with that level of self. So we're really vulnerable in this place. So that's why it is a battleground for our consciousness. And don't worry, I'm going to get to why this soul group, these two soul groups have repeater and leader on them. And I have to give you this backstory first, okay? So this is a total aside here, but this is why I will absolutely not get the jab. You know what I'm talking about? Because this is part of that paradigm of the battleground for our consciousness. I mentioned this was going to be triggering. I'm not inviting a whole host of your political, religious, health views on this at all. I am simply stating my reasons for why I will never get the jab. It will not happen. And it's out of integrity with unity consciousness because it does promote more division on this planet instead of coming together. It is yet another tactic in a battleground for our consciousness to keep us separate from our sovereignty, separate from our truth, and separate from what we believe is healthy or safe. That we don't have the answers within ourselves to know what is healthy or safe for us. Someone outside of me does. This is always the battleground for consciousness that takes place in a new astrological age, always and ever. And we have the opportunity here in this battleground for consciousness to either repeat what has come before, just with different players, same game, different players, same role, different game, okay? This is very, very important to realize right now because this battleground for consciousness puts in high contrast, high relief, the ever-widening gap and divide between those who are here on the planet to be repeaters and those who are here on the planet to be leaders. Thanks, Heidi. And you may think, because of certain narratives that are being spun, that doing a certain thing is better for everybody. You may think that. You may have been swindled into thinking that you're doing something for the highest and best good for everyone because there is that, ping, unity consciousness. Well, I'll do what's best for everybody. Okay. Is it really best for everybody or is it easier for you to do this? And who is it really easier for? Just going to put that out there. These are the bigger questions we're being asked to look at. And if you're trying to suss out which soul group you are in, repeater or leader, that question is an excellent prompt to help you start digging deeper around that. Okay? So again, you have to make your choices for you. I have no judgment. I have zero judgment. And I know that sounds like a lofty promise to you guys, but I have zero judgment on what you do in your life. If you feel it's aligned with your truth, that's up to you. And bless you. I hope we all find the answers we're looking for, right? I am just stating very clearly that it would be fully out of integrity for me as someone who speaks high volumes about unity consciousness and tries to anchor this and live at the level of unity consciousness in my everyday reality to get this shot, to get the jab. Because it disenfranchises so many under the guise of, we're doing this for the good of everyone. That's just me, okay? It polarizes the widening gap between political differences, class system differences, political parties, I mentioned politics, religion, health. These are already highly dualizing issues to begin with. And this only exacerbates that problem. It makes the battleground for consciousness an even greater divide. Okay? Are you guys with me so far? Thanks, Michelle. I'm glad. I'm glad that this is resonating. And I know that everyone who hears this, you're aligned with some level of this in you, whether you're on either side of this or not. It's something we all need to hear, and it's something we need to talk about. And it's very timely. So here we are on this battleground for consciousness, which is the entering and the ushering in of a new age of Aquarius, okay? By its very nature, this is a higher elevation of consciousness, this new astrological age. So what also happens when we move into this new astrological age is that the things that are out of alignment and polarized in such a disparity, not only do those things come up in really high contrast so that we can finally see it and examine it and see it for what it is and say, I do not consent to that, or I do consent to this. The frequency of this astrological age naturally highlights and spotlights these disparities. And it also naturally highlights and spotlights these disparities that we have in our own feeling, thinking, knowing, our belief systems. All of that comes up into high contrast and high relief as well. And we're looking at that through the lens of what's happening on planet Earth. Because what's happening on planet Earth is also what's happening in you. There is no difference between the two, right? On a collective level, we are projecting the separation and illusion that we feel within us on a global planetary scale. All of these divisions, all of this separation that we feel within ourselves is exactly projected onto the material plane of 3D. Because that's the nature of our reality here, okay? So where we are seeing this continued division, this fragmenting, this splitting off from unity consciousness, you're going to understand now, hopefully, in the spotlight of what I'm talking about, that everything that's happened in the last year and a half, the things that are predominant on this planet, the pandemic, all of the things that have religiously polarized us, politically polarized us, these are not random. They have to happen. They have to come up into high contrast as the result of moving into a different frequency and ushering in a new astrological age. As I like to call it, the gift and the garbage. Because if you can't see it, if you can't see it and you can't know it, how can you release it or shift it, right? And so this is a cosmic gift that says, here's all your shit that you guys need to figure out before you go into unity consciousness. And you can't really take this baggage with you because it's at a frequency that it'll just boot you out of 5D if you still hold on to this shit. Okay? So where this comes into high contrast is understanding that if you know this stuff, and if you're even anchoring into like a piece of what I'm saying here as some sort of truth, or it resonates with you at some sort of level of truth within you, are you willing to just say, oh, isn't that interesting? And then go on about your business like nothing happened? Or are you willing to say, well, I'm very aware, in fact, hyper aware, that things are really different on this planet, different than they have ever been. And they really are. That's the truth. We're going through a monumental shift, and the Great Earth Experiment of Spiritual Awakening, that's the sub-name of my book, Notes on Ascension, and the Great Earth Experiment of Spiritual Awakening, because it is a Great Earth Experiment. Which brings us to me talking a little bit more about the repeaters and the leaders, okay? And just to piggyback on what I was saying about the leader, if you're one of those people that is hyper aware that these changes are undeniable and they're not necessarily good for the greatest benefit of all, then you can't keep quiet anymore. Exactly, Heidi. Thank you for echoing before I was even going to say it, what I was going to say. It's not just about knowing this and keeping it to yourself anymore, because this is a planet of action. 3D is a planet of action. Nothing takes place here without action. It is what anchors who we are as beings that are of the light, but physical in nature, because 3D is a physical plane. So nothing happens here without action. And nothing changes here without action. And it is the tipping point of mass consciousness that creates action for the collective highest benefit of all. So the more people who can't keep quiet anymore, the more people who fully step into their leader role and do it from a sense of sovereign empowerment, meaning, and I've had to embrace this, and this is tough for myself, I don't care what happens. I'm not going to go into the fear matrix of, well, A, B, C, D through X could happen. If I speak up and I do this, I can't be in that place anymore. I can't be in integrity with who I am as a leader, a thought leader of unity consciousness, and not do anything. Right? Doing what I do means that I have talks like this, and I write books, and I lead group courses and programs. That is what I do. And I speak up in different ways, in ways that are making people in my family and community at the moment very uncomfortable. But I can't keep quiet anymore either. And I've had to embrace this as a leader. I don't care what happens to me, because it's not really about me. I have a unique individuated thread of consciousness that is part of the one all, that is here in a service to others paradigm and in that capacity. And so if I'm embracing that, I can't fear death, and I can't fear imprisonment or whatever else might happen to me. And I know that's a strong stance to take, and not all of you might be there, and that's okay. But I'm willing to do things that take me so far out of my comfort zone, because I know that there is a greater truth that I'm here to stand up for. And that's just me. And that's what puts me in the leader category. And I'm going to give you some examples of how you might know which camp you're in too. So here's some information about the repeaters and the leaders. So we have soul groups that tend to graduate from one level of consciousness to another with each other. It's all divine either way, right? When I'm done here, I'm going back home, wherever that is, and I'll be fine. I know that. And I know I came here for something bigger than me. And I'm okay with that now. I wasn't always, but I'm okay with that now. It's all divine either way. So repeaters tend to go through, I don't know why it's 25,000 years, but that's just the information I was giving. Repeaters, when they evolve as a soul group, or have the potential to evolve as a soul group, they go through 25,000 year cycles with each other. And at that point, there is an exit portal, a transit portal, to evolve based on the things that you've gleaned as wisdom, actions that you've taken. There's something that evolved you in some way or didn't. And you either get to graduate to the next level of consciousness or you don't, okay? And there have been a lot of soul groups who are repeaters, meaning they have not decided, because it is on a soul level, very much a soul level, where you decide you're going to ascend or not, okay? On a soul level, we contract that. So for a number of reasons, and I haven't been shown why all the reasons are there, but I've been shown a few, why these soul groups have not decided to evolve and have instead decided to repeat. One of the reasons why, and it's a very strong reason why, is because the false ascension matrix is very real and it's very powerful. And by taking away certain levels of information, even when we go through this kind of anesthetized level of experience in 3D, where we have this amnesia, we have this 3D veil of forgetting about who we are and our divinity, even with that, there are certain power groups on this planet particularly who are part of the false ascension matrix, withhold and omit information from humanity so that we can't evolve. And again, another trigger, Christianity, the Catholic Church especially, has omitted a lot of information about our divinity so that we don't evolve. Because it's easier to keep your thumb on a population that doesn't fucking know any better. Sorry, not sorry. That is one reason, the false ascension matrix being very, very strong. And anytime we go through an astrological age where it's a battleground for consciousness, the powers that be that are out of integrity with unity consciousness just find new ways to have a stronghold. okay? So we have to be vigilant with that. We have to always be looking at that, you know, okay, if I do this, it's easier for me, but who is it really easier for, right? We have to look at it within this paradigm, within this structure. So that's one of the reasons why there are so many repeaters. And now on planet Earth, we're in a really interesting time too, because repeaters from soul groups from different planets, different star systems, different galaxies have been routed here on planet Earth to decide whether they want to go back into the repeat camp again or be in the leader camp. And then so many souls have reincarnated from different ascended, evolved star systems and galaxies who have already gone way out of 3D density, don't need to come back to it, but they have decided to come back here and volunteer and help. Guess which camp those guys fall into? The leaders, okay? So when we think about those people who are here as leaders, and there's so much more to talk about with the repeater soul group, but I don't want to lose you in that. But I'd rather talk about which one resonates for you. And this is a solution-based group that I lead here, Global Acceleration of Ascension. So I'm not just going to point my finger at this and say, oh, look, there's all the darkness. I don't do that. If you've been following me, you know I never fucking do that. And I really dislike it when people do. I am solution-based. So I want to help you figure out which camp you're in, and if you want to get out of one camp and into another, how to do that. Fair enough? Okay. Give me a heart if this is resonating for you guys. Give me a like or a heart or something if you are following this, if this makes sense. Is this hitting you at the right time? Okay. We're in a really intense energy spiral right now. People want to say it's the new moon and we have a super dark moon and all that. Yeah, kind of. But there's so much more going on outside of the moon and that magnetic pull between us and the moon, which isn't entirely in integrity either, that's going on here. And so I want to give you a really broad context for this, okay? It really is about this major astrological shift that we're going through and how it's affecting our DNA. Everything feels different because it is different. You are different. So the lens with which you have perceived your reality before has completely changed because the vessel of the viewing has changed. Okay? I am so aligned with this, and I know, I just know. I've known of just learning how it all works. We're all learning, right? We're all learning. And so that's why there isn't any judgment on my part in presenting this information, none whatsoever, because we're all going through a growth spurt, and no one is any better or any worse than anyone else on this planet. We just have different soul contracts and soul paths. But here's the thing about soul contracts. We can change them anytime, depending on, in our sovereign, free will, God self level of being, whether we decide our journey, our path, our mission has changed or not. So you may very well have been, for millions of years, part of the repeater soul group, coming back with that cluster of other people who are in the same frequency as you. And that's why we align with soul groups, because we match with their frequency, okay? And that's why so many of us are finding each other in the world now. You know, those of us who identify as leaders, you know, I can say from my experience particularly, I've aligned with so many other leaders just in the last 2 years. And I felt alone in this world. At the beginning, when I started doing my practice now 22 years ago, I felt really alone for 2 decades doing what I do and talking what I talk about. It's only in the last 2 years that I've really aligned energetically, vibrationally, with my soul group and other leaders. We're not all talking about the same thing. We're not all doing the same things, but it's all complementary to each other and part of the same bandwidth or spectrum of frequency. The same is true for repeaters. You know, repeaters are aligned with others in their soul group who feel like there is nothing but suffering. There is nothing but carnage and chaos and confusion and so many people, places, scenarios to put you out of your power. It's somebody else's fault. There's always someone else to blame. There's resentment. I'm always the victim. And the people who cannot snap out of that frequency bandwidth are the repeaters. The people who have mired themselves in anger over and over and over again. Those who know nothing except competition and warlike tendencies. If I don't get mine, I won't survive. That level of thinking. It's very, very ancient. And it has done its work to divide the population. But it is also an extremely low vibration. And it has been present on this planet and many other planets that align with the 3D frequency for thousands and thousands, millions of years, really. And the repeaters never evolve out of that level of being violent, taking instead of giving, not creating anything, but just taking, consuming, living out of balance with those polarities, right? As humans in balance, we take, but we give. As humans in balance, we create, but we consume. As humans in balance, we understand there are gender principles, you know, of feminine divine principles of receptivity and care and compassion and forgiveness and kindness, and masculine principles of being productive, putting forth something out of inspired action, you know, taking initiative, leadership, okay? But when we are out of balance with those things, and we don't understand that there is even a balance to those things, we tend to be repeaters. So when you're sussing out which camp you might be in, has it been a recurring cyclical loop of consciousness for you that I'm always the victim? Why is this always happening to me? Why am I so unlovable? Why am I so unworthy? Why do I feel like everyone else is getting what's mine? Where's mine? Where's mine? What's mine? Not being grateful for anything. And again, there's no judgment here. There's no judgment here. And even if you're seeing pangs of that, how much of an energetic resonance does that have in making up who you are, who you think you are? Is it the overriding theme in your life? Because even if you're 51% of that, it's still the tipping point of your consciousness level, and therefore the tipping point of what puts you in a repeater or a leader group. I'm sorry that I said this was going to be triggering, okay? But this is, again, the gift and the garbage. This is a gift. This is an opportunity for you to really look at and be honest with yourself about where you're at energetically. And know that if it has been your contract up till now to be this way and be repeating this theme of consciousness over and over and over again, with this level of attention to it and this level of awareness of it, there is no excuse for you not to make necessary changes if you don't like it. Sorry, not sorry. Okay? Right. But there is always, this is to answer Michelle's question, there is always a tipping point of that level of consciousness, and whatever is the strongest resonance for you will win out. And then it kind of shrouds the rest of that level of consciousness. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you're 51% in feeling I'm out of power. Everyone else pulls the strings, and I just have to follow the leader. My whole life, that's who I am. Maybe that's who my parents were, and maybe, you know, it's not even really yours. It's just that you followed a role that was laid out for you by your peers. So maybe it wasn't even your role to choose, or your contract even. But you took it on because we tend to, you know, if there's stronger figures in our life, we tend to look at where they lead by example and take that on. And then we roll up a whole set of beliefs and thoughts and feelings around that. And next thing you know, it's like you're a whole identity. But it may not be really you. And it may not be aligned with your contract of who you are at all. That's what's pivotal about, again, being in this age of Aquarius and moving into this. You have a spotlight, a floodlight being put on all this stuff. So you can finally decide from your sovereign God self level of being, do I want to continue this way or do I want to change this contract? Right? That's who I was for 60 years. I'm learning and evolving. Awesome. And that is a beautiful statement right there. That I am. I am learning and evolving and growing. That means that you are in the process. It doesn't state that I want to learn and grow and evolve. That doesn't mean shit what you want. I am settles you and anchors you into the frequency of what is happening, what is now, what is current, right? So even starting to make more I am declarations can be really pivotal for you who are feeling like you're on that teetering level of consciousness between being empowered or disempowered, awake, not awake, right? A leader, a repeater, okay? You have to be able to be honest with yourself about where you lean towards the most. And don't judge yourself for it. Because when you judge yourself for it, you put yourself automatically into a lower ego mind, linear mind frequency. And that is not a realm of growth as we go forward. It will only repeat and parrot back to you knowledge of what is already known, what has already been. And I've said this a million times, and if you follow me, I talk about this all the time. You have no business listening to that level of self because it can't ever offer you information on where you're going. It can only offer you information on what has been. That's exactly why I'm teaching ESP, because without perceptual diversity, going into different levels of mind to see the bigger picture of what's really going on, then we just have to trust the conscious linear mind and the subconscious. And these are two realms of mind that cannot offer us any insight on where we're going, only what has been. Okay? If you're a repeater, a good way to start looking at, some of you have mentioned this is how I've been for so long, whatever. What were you like when you were a little kid? And this is a really important thing to look at, and I'll tell you why. Because what we are moving into in this new astrological age is very much a new frontier, the realm of the unknown, at least from our conscious mind 3D aspect of self. Our divinity is going through a remembering. We've already been here. We've already gone there. We've already done that. We've already been that. And in the eternal now aspect of who we are, which is only accessible through the superconscious, we are occupying many, many timelines where everything we desire, we're already doing that in some other timeline. So if you desire to be an evolved being who has gone back home, whatever that means, there is a timeline where that is you. Because through your imagination and your desire and your intention to create that as a focal point of attention, even for a second, you've created a timeline where that exists and you are doing that, okay? Sometimes that makes people either like that's too much, or sometimes that makes people feel at ease. That makes me feel at ease. That anything I could ever desire has already happened, is happening. It's just a timeline that doesn't happen to be my current point of attention and focus at the moment, right? That is true of you also being a repeater or a leader. If you find yourself in the repeater camp, you can vow from your God self, sovereign aspect, to put your attention and your focus on the timeline where you are a leader, where you're in the leader soul group. You can do that. That's who you are. But we are moving into such a new frontier. We are moving into a new frontier and way of being that marries the spiritual and the human in ways that we've never seen before on this planet. The Great Earth Experiment of Spiritual Awakening, in other words. It is an invitation that is ongoing that we be in this childlike sense of innocence and have this sense of wonder and curiosity, playful curiosity, instead of going into the panic of what happens next? What if we all die? What if there is nothing else? What if there's no life after death? And for the last year and a half, you have been in a heightened container, because of what's been happening on this planet, of fight or flight survival consciousness. You have had everything sensationalized so much that you have no other choice in your central nervous system but to respond with the cascade effect of fight or flight. But no imagination or creativity occurs at that level of being. The mind and its neurological impulses are cut off from creativity and imagination at that point. If you don't believe me, read Dr. Joe Dispenza, any one of his books, who has studied this at length. And so it's not really entirely your fault, except that you've believed maybe all of the fear and allowed yourself to be fully inserted and plugged into the fear matrix, where you are cutting yourself off and agreeing to cutting yourself off from creativity and imagination, where you can think of something better or know something better or believe even that something is better around the corner. You have been allowing yourself to be cut off from that. And if it's the repeater aspect of you, that is doubly true. But if you recognize yourself as being a leader, and I'll talk more about this in a second, you are not allowing yourself to keep being reinserted into the fear matrix with the next new sensationalized media article or the next new thing we have to be scared about. Wildfires, plague, pandemic, COVID shots, masks, fear and death, all of these things, and we are very much part of a death program culture, okay? So it's programming as part of the 3D matrix to be reinserted into that over and over and over again. It's part of our reptilian programming, and we do have that in our DNA, but you don't have to genetically express that part of your DNA. That's another choice that you make of the God sovereign self, the leader aspect of you. So the childlike sense of innocence and wonder and playful curiosity is the ongoing invitation that we have as we keep upgrading our frequency and we keep going into this new frontier of marrying the spiritual with the human in ways that we've never experienced before. If you can't do that, if you are not willing to do that, if you don't want to do that, you find it's too uncomfortable to do that, welcome to the Repeater Soul Group. Welcome back. Sorry, not sorry. Okay? If you have the childlike sense of innocence as we move into this new frontier, and you have a playful curiosity, I wonder what's next. I wonder what I could do to step up what I'm already doing, where it feels less of an obligation and feels more like, I have a lot of gifts. What else could I be doing here? Do you see the difference? Leader group, welcome back. We need you. Okay? When you were a little kid, going back to this childlike sense of innocence example, when things were presented to you that were new concepts, new ideas, changes in your life, maybe your parents got divorced, or you lost one of your best friends, or anything like that, how did you deal with change when you were a little kid? Because that says everything about how you're going to approach this new astrological age and your role and your contract with it. When I was a little kid, I didn't know I was a leader, but when I, in retrospect, look back at all the things that happened that introduced change in my life, or when I was offered concepts that I had to either embrace or repel, and it was one way or the other for me. You could probably tell I have some pretty strong opinions. But when I was a little kid, I was really shy. I was really reserved because there were things that were going on with me on a spiritual level that I always felt very different from anyone else. I was tuned in. I was very clairaudient. I knew things and felt things about people that I couldn't explain. I just knew they were true. And the couple of times that I did disclose that information, I was looked at like I had 3 heads. So I stopped expressing that part of myself, at least openly and outwardly. But when I was presented with new concepts and ideas when I was a kid, I smelled bullshit from 10 miles away. And even though I was a shy and reserved kid, I had no problem whatsoever with making my voice heard. I had a horrible relationship with my paternal grandmother based on this, because I wasn't a quiet, docile little girl, a little kid that was meant to be seen and not heard. I was not that little kid. I mean, I was reserved a lot in a lot of ways, but if something came up and I smelled bullshit on it, even if I didn't know why, but I would still be very outspoken about why I thought or felt something was not right. Or when someone was out of integrity, and I had this with my grandmother quite a bit. I think we were here to trigger each other. I think we were here as Joanna Hunter likes to say, agents of the universe to trigger each other and help us see who we really are. That's true of my father too. Very, very outspoken young person with my father. My father wanted me to be a nice, ladylike young lady who did lady stuff and wore dresses and was polite and please and thank you. I was not that kid. I was not that kid. And I hated double standards. You know, what my older brother was allowed to do, I wasn't allowed to do, and I called bullshit on that. I got kicked out of Sunday school when I was 11 years old because we would have Bible study, and we would study the Old Testament on a few days a week, and we would study the New Testament of the Bible on another few days of the week. I'm like, is anyone else seeing this? Like, why is the New Testament and Old Testament so different? Why is Jesus so awesome and his dad is such a dick? And I wouldn't say it that way because I was 11, but I said something to that effect. And I was such a problem and a nuisance that I ended up getting kicked out of Sunday school, which was a dream come true for me because I hated it. And I smelled bullshit a mile away with Christianity. And when I was supposed to get my confirmation, I had a big argument and it ended up being a discussion, a diplomatic discussion with my father when I was 11, why I was not going to get my confirmation and stay in the Catholic Church. And I didn't know that I was a leader because this was very uncomfortable for me when I was a little kid. You know, you're just trying to figure out the world, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to have friends. And there are some things I just could not do. I could not be available for because it literally made me want to crawl out of my skin. And I've always been that way. And now I know why. With everything that's happening in the world and with this new frontier of being presented to us. It's my passion and my purpose and my mission to help people bridge that gap and to extend a hand forward and say, don't be scared. Don't be scared. Come on. There's nothing to fear except acquiescing to something that really feels out of alignment with you. That's the most that we can fear. That is the biggest fear we could ever have, is to be so out of alignment with self that we want to crawl out of our skin, that we want to scream. That's how you know you're a leader. And if you are feeling right now so many things that are just not adding up, things are not making sense, and maybe you can't even put your finger all the time on why that is, but you know, and you can't deny that truth in yourself, or you can't deny that truth in yourself any longer. So maybe you are coming out of the repeater camp. And maybe you're noticing that, you know, I may not have recognized myself as being what Kathryn is talking about, as being a leader my whole life. But I feel this shift now, that there are things that I know that I can't unknow. There are things I've unraveled about the nature of my existence and my role, about who I am and who I want to be going forward, that I can no longer deny about myself. There's a way of being that I want for the planet and the collective, that I want it so bad that I can see it, feel it, taste it. And maybe I don't know what I can do with that, but I want that. You're no longer in the repeater camp. You're re-examining, in other words, your soul contract of who you've been, reviewing it, and you have an opportunity now to revise it. Every single one of us has the opportunity to revise their soul contracts. I'm going to say that again. If you've been in the repeater camp for maybe millions of years, you can decide right now to grow and evolve. You can decide to revise your soul contract. And maybe, some of you who identify as leaders, you want to be in a different capacity. You want to upgrade your frequency of being a leader. You're also being invited to have this playful innocence and sense of curiosity, the sense of wonder about how can I do more? Or phrase that in a way where it doesn't feel obligatory, but rather feels like a nice prompt for yourself and a nice little nudge, like, I have all these gifts. I have all these ways I can be looking at, these skills, these abilities, talents that I have that have cultivated over a lifetime. And to be honest, you probably cultivated them over many lifetimes. That's not incidental. That's not random. These are the gifts that you brought to bear to elevate human consciousness. Not only your own experience, but the collective of human consciousness. We're being invited to look at things through that lens of perception, the bigger picture. So I'm going to leave this here. So I hope that this has been informative, and I hope this gets the creative juices flowing. Just by being in this space and broadening your perception around this has created a shift within you. I hope that those of you who came here feeling maybe confused or feeling out of sorts with the energies right now, that this brought some clarity as to what's going on. I'd love your feedback to know if this did help you in that way. With the knowing things at a young age, but I didn't speak up about anything. And a lot of us didn't, because again, when we're young, we tend to fear authority figures. This is why not much changes over time. Our authority figures when we were young were our parents, our peers, our priests, our teachers. Our authority figures now as we're adults are politicians, health officials, right? Bigger picture, folks. Bigger picture. And you can change your soul contract. That's beautiful, Mary, and I applaud you on your courageousness, because until we really anchor into our courage, folks, and we really know what that means for us, where our courage is, where that resides in the body, we can't make these shifts. We can't make these changes. You could do a simple, you could do muscle testing, you could do pendulum dowsing, you could use your place of truth exercise to access where courage is in your body, so that when you are presented with a new challenge or a new bit of information that you're like, my bullshit detector's going mental right now, you could say, body, 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 help me locate courage in my body. And you may need to do it a few times, but then you'll get that intuitive hit of where courage resides in the body. So that when you're presented with new challenges, you can just say, body, body, body. Amplify that place of courage within me. It sounds simple. It is, but it's powerful. That none of the power is outside here. Let's just get rid of that myth and illusion right now. All the power is right here. You are a walking battery of light and divinity and power and truth. Don't let anyone ever swindle you out of that. Don't let anyone ever talk you down from your greatness or dumb you down from your truth. Be honest with yourself and say, I know where my truth is. I know when I'm aligning with truth, because you do. So lots of love to all of you. And I really, really hope that you have a beautiful, beautiful week, and lots of love and peace to you all. Bye-bye. Thank you.